we're getting some more visuals from Ukraine. Remember, viewers, we've been getting you all the images of the shelling that is taking place in Ukraine. Now, one such video of a massive explosion that has taken place in Chernihiv, and we have seen how in that particular area as well, there has been a massive movement of the Russian troops as well as the Ukrainian troops. Remember, this particular area is just northeast of the capital of the Ukraine, that is Kiev, and a massive explosion now being reported from Chernihiv. We have to determine as to what kind of a missile that had been used in this particular explosion that has taken place. But we do see that the Ukrainian troops have also captured several of the Russian armory, several of the Russian weaponry from Chernihiv as well, those images that we had gotten yesterday. And now massive explosions that are being reported from Chernihiv as well, that is just southeast of, in fact, Kiev. And we had seen how the Russian media and the Russian Defense Ministry had sent out those videos of the Russian troops, armed vehicles, in fact, making their way towards Kiev, try to show that the Russian troops are excessively and aggressively moving towards the capital of Ukraine. And this, of course, comes in the backdrop of how the Russia has, in fact, promised a temporary ceasefire to make sure that there is a safe evacuation of the civilians also that can be carried out in the Donetsk Oblast region. But now in Chernihiv, in the other part of the country, we see these images coming out of excessive bombing, excessive shelling that is still taking place in places like Chernihiv, in Poltava, in Kharkiv, in several other areas as well. Our colleagues join us on the broadcast. Kritsveen continues to stay on with us. Kritsveen, we see that, even this comes as a temporary ceasefire that has been promised from Russia. This kind of shelling still carrying out in several places, now this latest being in Chernihiv. And even as we have seen since morning, that residential blocks and buildings still being targeted by the Russian troops, even as a temporary ceasefire is on the horizon.
Yes, apart from Russia declaring a ceasefire, mainly in the east of Ukraine, we're looking at two regions. One is Volnovakha and Mariupol, the humanitarian corridors which have been earmarked. However, it's a different picture in Chernihiv. And Rohit and I, we have been tracking all the videos very closely. And what we've seen right now is a huge blast. And we do not know the nature of the blast yet. But what we're seeing on our screen, those visuals speak 1,000 words. We're looking at, ceasefire violations. We're looking at huge blasts still occurring in many parts of Ukraine. And this time, that video that we just saw is from Chernihiv.
You know, Priyanka, I also wanted to bring attention to the fact that Chernihiv over the last few days has been facing severe bombardment from the Russian forces. Now, there are 3 or 4 major cities in Ukraine that have been coming under intense shelling by the Russian forces over the last few days. We speak of Kiev, we speak of Kharkiv and Chernihiv, and also in Mariupol. We've been getting several videos over the last few days showing how the Russian forces have been bombarding several parts of these major cities of Ukraine. Now, this particular video that we're seeing on air is from Chernihiv, where once again we're seeing the aftermath of intense shelling that is going on over there. And as far as the ceasefire is concerned, what Crispino was talking about, now the ceasefire is only in 2 cities that is part of the Donetsk Oblast, Donetsk region, that is Mariupol and Volnovakha. So it's only in these 2 cities that a ceasefire has been announced. Temporary ceasefire has been announced just so that, and a humanitarian corridor has also been opened just so that civilians could be moved out of there. But this is a temporary ceasefire in that region, and it's only in 2 cities of the Donetsk Oblast. As far as the rest of the country is concerned, well, the intense shelling is continuing, as you can see very much on your screen. This video from Chernihiv shows you what has really been happening over the last 10 days. Remember, this is the 10th day of the Russian offensive in Ukraine. It has been going on in several cities from Kiev, as I said, from Kiev, Kharkiv, Chernihiv, Mariupol, Melitopol. In several of these cities have been intensely bombarded by the Russian forces over the last few days. This video just gives a glimpse of what has been happening, not just in Chernihiv, but across the entire country. By, after the Russian forces have been bombarding Ukraine over the last few days. This video from Chernihiv shows you exactly what has been happening, not just in Chernihiv, but across the entire country. Crispino.
Yes, as we have been pointing out about this particular video that we just saw, we have just seen about Chernihiv, the blast. Now we're looking at the impact of the blast and many other such blasts. Now earlier in the day also we were showing how the people who are trying to flee Kharkiv region, especially in Kharkiv, people trying to flee by the train station amid the heavy bombardment. We have to see how the next 24 hours pans out because Russia has just announced the ceasefire a couple of hours back. Over to you, Priyanka.
Well, yes, Crispino, we have seen the kind of bombardment that is being carried out, and not just in public infrastructure but also residential blocks, oil depots that had also been targeted by the Russian troops. There were airstrikes that had been carried out in certain strategic locations to hinder the movement of the civilians and also to make sure that the Ukrainian troops also suffer severe losses. And there are, of course, the collateral damage in terms of civilian lives that have also been lost because of this heavy bombardment, sporadic bombing that in fact has taken place in Chernihiv as well. I also want to bring in Kritsween right now. You know, we have seen, Kritsween, these kind of videos that have come to our news desk from the very beginning of the escalation of the Russian troops on the ground. And now we see Chernihiv, which is, of course, as Crispino was also pointing out, it's a little away from the Donetsk Oblast region where the ceasefire has been announced. But even there, over the bordering areas of Ukraine as well, we see these kind of images coming in.
Absolutely. To be precise, Priyanka, Chernihiv is towards the northeastern side of Kiev, capital Kiev, 120 kilometers from Kiev. So the Russians essentially trying to launch their attack from the north. That's what we're getting to know. And yes, Chernihiv pretty much has seen a lot of firing, bombardment and shelling the last few days. And these kind of visuals have been coming in every now and then. Now we are, of course, looking at certain cities, two cities to be precise, that will be looking at a green corridor wherein civilians will be allowed to, move to safer location. That is only valid and stands true for today. So a temporary ceasefire that is being looked at, and all eyes on how smoothly operations are carried out as far as the ceasefire is concerned. But very important to point out the kind of diplomatic efforts that are being made time and again, especially from the Ukrainian side, because this was an appeal that was made by the Ukrainians essentially, and the Russians have given in now. We're also being told, as for the next round is concerned, the third round that could take place anytime within the next 24 hours, certain agreements could also be reached upon. So what would be the nature of those agreements? Will we be looking at a longer ceasefire? Remains to be seen. For the moment, 10 a.m. onwards, Moscow time, these two cities will be looking at a green corridor wherein citizens will be safely evacuated. As for these visuals are concerned, the aftermath of shelling in Chernihiv on your television screens on the right side, on the left side, and these kind of visuals like Priyanka, Rohit and Crispino have been pointing out have been picked up from across Ukraine. So the situation is only escalating by the day, and we've seen the aftermath of shelling and bombardment that continues to only escalate by the day. Remember, the Russian forces have claimed, along with the Ukrainians, that Kherson has fallen. Kharkiv pretty much also sending out those kind of visuals wherein we've seen constant firing and shelling take place. As for Mariupol is concerned, things will settle down a bit, at least for today, because that is essentially one city that is going to be now making sure that all of those civilians who want to move out are given a green corridor. As for Lviv is concerned, now Lviv is towards the western side and it's towards the neighboring Poland, and that's one city wherein our reporters, our colleagues Shavan and Radul have been reporting from. If we go by what we've been picking up from them, that side of the country is relatively peaceful at this point in time. The attack seems to be coming in from the eastern side, from the northern side and from the southern side. Northeast is where Chernihiv is located, precisely 120 kilometers from capital Kiev, and the attack pretty much coming in from the northern side. Now, Ukraine has also very, very strongly accused Belarus of helping helping the Russian troops out carry out their offensive. And they've said that action must be taken against Belarus as well. And we've seen how several countries have now, along with Russia, imposed sanctions against Belarus as well. So Belarus is also pretty much facing the heat of what's going on in Ukraine. It's a war-torn nation, certainly. 10 days and counting, and the situation doesn't seem to be getting any better. But talks certainly leading up to something. Another round of talks is taking place, and like our experts have been pointing out, till the time there is scope for talks, there is room for talks, there is certainly hope that things will get better in at least the next 2 to 3 days to come.
Oh yes, Krithween, and we have seen that those talks have also resulted in the Ukrainian delegation saying that even in the second talks, the second round of talks, they have not achieved what all of them that they set out to achieve as well. But we will be keeping a close track of all those images that are coming in from Ukraine. For the moment, I want to thank all my colleagues for joining me on the broadcast. For the moment, we move on.